street photography, capturing the life on the streets. Sometimes it's about seeing very unusual moments, and other times it's about seeing the beauty in the everyday life. For me, street photography is about being in the moment to be able to notice potential pictures when they happen, because you're not privileged to just take good pictures. You can only go out and do your best. Whatever happens, happens. Today I want to present to you the camera which does an exceptional job at supporting you while going out and taking great photographs. The Fujifilm X-T30, the best value street photography camera of this year. A street photography camera should shine in three categories. The first one is decent image quality, the second one is that it should inspire you to go out, and the third one is that it should be small and lightweight. But before we go over these criteria in a little bit more detail, I just wanted to mention that we will also take a look at the video specs, because I initially bought the camera to record YouTube videos, although I changed the camera for video. And yeah, we will also talk about that after we talked about the three criteria for a street photography camera. Talking about image quality, this camera got a 26 megapixel APS-C size sensor, which means that it isn't the best for low light, because this sensor is just not as big as a full frame sensor, so it can't collect as much light as a bigger size sensor, but it's decent at it. I wouldn't buy it if you're only planning on shooting at nighttime. For me, the pictures look great up to ISO 1600, they look good up to ISO 3200, and they look acceptable up to ISO 6400, but after that the pictures really start to deteriorate. But you got 26 megapixels, which means that you have the ability to crop the picture without losing too many details. Talking about dynamic range though, honestly it's fucking perfect. I don't need more than that. It's great to use. I will also show you a little example right now, but as you can see, it's doing a perfect job. And the color science on Fujifilm cameras, for me, they just nailed it. The skin tones look so freaking phenomenal. They don't look as natural as some other cameras. I feel they have a cooler white tone. I really dig it when I take photos. It's just, they just look so good coming out of this camera. A camera should also inspire you to go out, and the Fuji X-T30 does a great job at it. I mean, just take a look at it. It just screams, grab me, I want to go out, just take pictures. And when we're talking about a camera for street photography, basically a camera you take with you everywhere, then it's also important that you take a look at it and just be like, yeah, I want to use it, let's just put it around my neck and let's just go out and take great photographs. What I also do want to mention on that note is that there are some film recipes inside the camera. Basically, you tweak the camera settings and the picture, the JPEG coming out of that camera looks very similar to film stock. Basically like your Porta 400, Kodak Vintage, whatever you want to make your pictures look like. And it really does a good job at replicating these film recipes. When you then download the pictures to your phone or onto your laptop or whatever, then it just is an enjoyable experience looking through the pictures. When you do street photography, you also want a camera which is small and lightweight, because you don't want to think about bringing that camera with you. You just grab it and you go out and take amazing photos. And also, if you carry it around all day long, it's just more comfortable having a camera which is small and lightweight, not like this one, because it's really, it's really getting heavy while filming. And other people are also not that suspicious when you use this camera, because it looks like an old camera, it's small, you probably just take some pictures just while traveling to a different city or something like that. They would never really assume that you are a professional photographer or that you are really into street photography. Fujifilm even offers a great selection of f2 lenses, which are like there's an 18mm, a 23 and a 35mm if I'm not mistaken, and I think a 50, something like that. I highly recommend that you pick up one of these cameras with the XT30 body. It's a great combination, it keeps the whole kit very tiny, and you will also get some pretty nice image quality out of it, and it just feels good to also use the aperture dye on, for example, the 23mm lens I have. What you also really shouldn't underestimate is having a flippy screen. And I mean a flip up and flip down screen, not a flip out screen. A flip out screen like the one on my Lumix S5 is great for filming me, stuff like that, but it really isn't great for street photography. When you street photography, you want just fast access to all the settings, all the functionality of your camera, and having to basically flip the screen out and then up, it just takes too much time and you don't really use it, or it's not very practical. And having a flip up and flip down screen on the other hand, it's just so easy to use, it's so fast. I mean, yeah, it's for me personally the way to go when you do street photography. I would also recommend that you use an L bracket or a handle, something like that for the camera, because for me the camera is even too small, and because of that it feels a little bit slippery. So it's just a more secure way to operate my camera if I use an L bracket or a handle with it. So how much does it actually cost? The camera itself, the body only costs around 650 bucks used. Maybe you can find it for even less money. Because the camera isn't produced anymore, you can just buy it used. This can actually be a good thing these days because of the chip shortage. You have to wait a pretty long time to buy a Fujifilm camera. And when you have the ability to buy it used, you don't have to wait that long and you have to spend less money. And like I said, I would recommend that you combine that body, the Fujifilm X-T30, with one of the f2 prime lenses, because then you just got a killer combo. The f2 primes, when you also buy them used, and then you're looking around 300 to 350 bucks for the lens, which means that you overall looking at around 1,000 bucks for the body plus a lens. While that might not be cheap, I mean it definitely isn't, it is a very good value. What's free on the other hand is giving this video a like and subscribing to my channel if you enjoyed it so far. Cheers mate! So after having talked about the photography functions of that camera, let's talk about the video functions. Because of the footage coming out of that camera for videography is also very nice, and it's even the reason why I got the camera in the first place. But there are a couple of reasons which makes it very difficult to use this camera for videography, and it's that many that I have written it down. It only got 8-bit recording and 10-bit recording externally. Not a big deal for that camera, but it should be noted. It only got a 2.5mm microphone jack instead of a 3.5, which means that you have to use an adapter every time you want to use a microphone. You might think it's not a big deal, and it's not really that big of a deal, but there are very few adapters out there, so you should definitely think about that. Only micro HDMI, not that big of a deal, but should be noted because it's a more fragile port than a full-size HDMI. It cuts your video clip down into 3-minute parts, so it has a 10-minute 4K recording limit and a 50-minute 180p recording limit. And although you can record for 10 or 15 minutes, it still cuts your footage down into 3-minute blocks of data, which it's not that enjoyable to look through your video when it's all cut down into 3-minute files. The biggest problem though is that this camera overheats after 30 minutes of recording when the temperatures are around 24 degrees, and not being able to record more than 30 minutes of video is actually something which can be a big problem when you use this camera for just talking head style like I'm doing right now, or when you film a video with your friend, like I also did in the past. Only being able to record for 30 minutes, it sucks. The last point on my list is autofocus, and I think it's pretty alright. It isn't the best autofocusing system on the market. It's not as good as Sony or Canon, but it's also not as bad as Panasonic, for example. It's somewhere in between. Most of the time it's reliable, but when you do street photography, I would recommend doing zone focusing anyways. If you don't know what zone focusing is manually focusing with a fixed lens and a very high aperture like f8, and because you're using a very high aperture like f8, a big zone of your picture is in focus. If you're using a wide lens, let's say like a 35mm or a 28mm, and it just saves you so much time when you're doing street photography, because the only thing you have to do is composite the photo and just press the shutter button. No focusing involved because you're all doing it manually, and if you get a good feel for it, you can do it even before you just put the camera on whatever you want to photograph, because if you know what your zone is and you know what you want to photograph, you can do it beforehand. So yeah, it just saves you a lot of time and it will get you some pretty incredible pictures. Just like I said in the beginning, you are really getting a lot of performance for the price you're paying. This isn't the cheapest camera you can get, but it is very cheap for what you're getting. So if you enjoyed the video, then please give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and also share this video with a friend. And I see you in the next one. Out.